Hi, my name's Dee, your Professor of Woo Woo, and welcome to Sunchild Tarot, and welcome to our bi-weekly look at the lunations. And of course, this one is a doozy, just like the last one. I have with me astrologer David Fischer. How are you doing, David?
Good, Dee. Thanks for having me again.
So like I say, this one's a doozy, just like the last one. I mean, I would love to turn around and say, like I do every video, oh, I love this eclipse. No, not so much this time. It's got its good points. I'm still in love with the last eclipse, but I also think that we can't really talk about this eclipse in isolation, can we?
No. I mean, eclipses always come in bundles. They're never to be looked at just in one particular event. So we're going to jump into the chart, but before, I think we should explain a little bit of how that works, of timing with eclipses, because we see, as we were discussing previously in the background, how we see people on YouTube just giving a timing for eclipses that's like, oh, every 6 months, or it will last until the next set of eclipses, and that's not quite true. You have events manifesting every eclipse cycle that will affect the area where they fall in your chart, the axis of houses where they fall in your chart, and they will shift the narrative and circumstances around those particular topics in your life. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that when they happen again, the events of previously will just fall into the background. No, when they happen in a certain axis, so long as you're having them in that sign, you will have the same people, the same events, the same topics, manifesting a sequence of events that's going to shift the whole narrative. But when they shift to the other sign, for instance, you will see a continuation of events that will start affecting those other two houses. You see, as if one pair of houses bled a set of circumstances into a new one, like a change of seasons within a TV show. You have a cliffhanger, and then the topics of the previous season are come to a closure, but then you leave off the taste for the second season for people to come back later on as a teaser. That's sort of like how it feels when you change from one eclipse season to the next.
So there's also the point that you're saying, I mean, because if you look within one set of eclipse seasons within an axis, so like we're in Taurus, Scorpio, we've just done Gemini, Sagittarius. I nearly said Cancer, Capricorn, that's when I started. But when a new eclipse comes along, or along that same axis, or even just after the previous axis, it's not so much that the new eclipse is replacing the old one. Would you say it's more like one eclipse drops a stone into the pond, there's the ripples, a new set of ripples is put in, but the old ripples are still there? Or is it like more one eclipse was there and somebody, a new person comes into the room, and so attention may shift to that new eclipse, that new person, but the other person hasn't necessarily been kicked out and told it's time to go home?
Yes, and astrology works in this way. You see where those ripples started. You see the cycles and their beginnings. So you can have connections throughout time, like whenever planets transit that particular degree where the eclipse happened, particularly the degree, but it might be when planets go over that particular sign as well. You will have a continuation in the story, you know, of that particular narrative, of those houses, those topics. They're just not going to be the forefront of your life. They're just not going to be as unstable, unless you natally have the nodes there, as they were when the eclipses were happening there. So you have to tie back to these eclipses. For instance, you were mentioning the Capricorn Cancer eclipses. Those themes are not done in our lives. They've just continued to impact us in different ways. They are falling into the background of a consciousness now if you don't have many planets there, because it's not being so activated right now. Except
or they've changed and evolved, and therefore
they've evolved, exactly. And every time you have something like the moon or anything else going through Capricorn, you kind of get a little development there, and a reminding of why those circumstances are the way they are, or how your current scenario relates back to that time, that when those things started and when that was unstable. And that's it. The ripple effect that you were mentioning is interesting because it's interfering waves, right? It's like, let's go to sound waves. If you have, sound waves. If you have one radio in each corner of a room and all of them start broadcasting in different times, different shows, you will hear one speaking one thing there, and then the other one's going to start like a minute later, and then the other one a minute later. You will not be able to focus on all of them at the same time.
Yeah.
Some of them are going to be louder at times than others, but at some point, they're all going to finish up in different rhythms. One is going to finish up first, even though it was one of the last ones to start. The other one's going to continue much longer than the rest of them, you see?
Yeah. And that'd be
they just
dependent on your own
background
chart.
noise of your life.
That would be dependent on your own chart, I'm assuming.
That would be dependent on your own chart, which ones you'd focus on for the longer term. But while the eclipses are happening in a determined sign, you could say that the radio for that particular sign is loudest, and you can focus on that particular show the best, even though the other ones are also going on in the background, and you have to pay attention to them as well.
Right. So there's, I have two themes for this eclipse. One, well, now I'm going to keep my second theme till later, but I'm really tempted to title this video "One Hand Giveth," which is more of a reference to the previous eclipse than to this one.
Yes. I mean, the last eclipse was much more promising in terms of the feeling around it, the things that we were imagining, the things that we wanted to sat on to start doing. This eclipse will show us a different perspective. Let's put it like that. Right. So to start talking about this show, you already see that Mars, because there's 3 planets being ruled by it, is very dominant in this chart. It's trine to the moon very closely, and the nodes, contacting the nodes. And you have Venus and Jupiter and Chiron, if you want to throw that in, ruled. And Venus is conjunct to Chiron, so I would say it has more of a play in this scenario than I usually would consider. Now, this means that the chaotic energy of the eclipses is being channeled, is being let through by this energy of Mars, by this rebel, this confrontational energy.
Yeah.
And so, and it's an energy also of splitting, of departure, of separation. So this eclipse, and Venus being debilitated with Chiron, this eclipse is not about stability in relationships. It's not about getting together and cozy to, celebrate the victories. It's about really recognizing where things cannot mix, where they are not blending well, where that makes the components of a particular structure or institution feel insecure. So if you're talking about investments, for instance, financial investments, you're talking about insecurity in the markets, you're talking about insecurity of investments and people pulling out, like the Bitcoin thing that's happening, people pulling out their investments in a moment of crises. That kind of thing, to exemplify what I mean with the Martian energy of instability and insecurity within institutions of power. We see also there's an interesting, because of the war on Ukraine, important developments have been taking place in the past couple of days, in the past few days. For instance, the ducts that take the gas from Russia to the rest of Europe that go through Ukraine have been blocked. And you have their Mars conjunct Neptune, suggesting that block, suggesting that supply of resources is being cut off because of war, because of those conflicts going on in that area. And being the ruler of Venus, Venus is that perhaps that trade of goods and of resources, natural resources being interrupted. And I say gas because Neptune is associated with gas generally as well. And that's going to affect the economy in Europe for the decades to come, like new agreements, new renewable sources of energy. So this is not just a simple split because of war. This is more than that. This is something that reshapes the agreements in the long term in a way that we haven't seen since what? The Cold War. The Cold War ended. So which is the Saturn return. It was almost 30 years ago, actually 30 years ago now, that the USSR ended and all these conflicts are coming back. And so it ties back again to what I was saying. Remember when Saturn was in Aquarius last, this is what was going on. And now we see a repetition of those themes, even though in a different way, because we are in a different world 30 years later. But the themes are the same and the characters, some of them are the same in different positions, right? Putin was still there, so it was already there. So you have the Saturn return to that, bringing about all those themes. The eclipses are squaring Saturn stationing retrograde at this point of Aquarius also. So everything that's happening now also ties back to that time and the agreements that were set in place at that time, and they are crumbling. The eclipses bring this chaos energy. So the topics are the same with Saturn, but they are very, uncertain. We don't know how this is going to pan out yet. And the consequences that's going to have in the long term. We just know that it's going to reshape a lot of political agreements, which is the Taurus institutional traits that we were mentioning before, that society has to stabilize itself and to keep up hierarchy. So yeah, new ranks are going to be distributed after this period for people who did whatever they did in order to set the new order, right? So this eclipse is quite important. And it's also tying in, this is the last thing I'll say, I'll let you speak in a moment. It's tying to the Mars retrograde that we're going to have by the end of the year, because Mercury, first planet to ingress into Gemini now, is retrograding in Gemini, and it's the ruler of Gemini, setting the themes, or at least the possibility it's coming up with the resources and the people and the institutions that are going to be involved mainly in the Mars retrograde dynamic. They are being brought about now into focus with the Mercury retrograde. And whatever is decided now is going to have that splitting feeling until the end of the year. That's going to cause the primary retrograde Mars significations that we're going to see. I'm sorry if that's too much to take in, but I hope you guys were able to understand.
That Saturn square the nodes, because I had a lot to say about Saturn, completely forgot that it was squaring the nodes, but that is such a big thing. And remembering now, I mean, there's no end of people on YouTube who have discussed the Saturn squaring the nodes, this choice of which way are we going to go? Are you going to, how are you going to build? But where Saturn is, this is the degree of the Jupiter conjunct Chiron last time they were together back in 2009, which I think is really quite interesting with the topics that we're seeing right now. And also it is, although I'll probably be taken out and shot for making this association, see me after, but it's the 12th part of the Jupiter-Lilith conjunction back in 2013, the last time they were together. So there's all of these motivations where Jupiter's been there making things, making the wound better. So my ears really pricked up when you called that Martian rulership being a rebel energy, because the Lilith for me is featuring quite a lot in this eclipse, because interestingly, the degree of this eclipse, the 25 degrees, is ruled by the angel, I'll pronounce it correctly, Pahalia, of which I have a nifty card just to hold up to represent it. So it's one of the more non-human angels.
Keep going.
Yeah,
a little further.
You know,
that's
definitely an Enoch angel style.
Yeah, it's a pretty card.
Rotating circles and wings, and no doubt there's some eyes in there, although I can't see it on this. Pahalia is also ruling the degree, was ruling the degree of Lilith from the last solar eclipse. So that bit that in the more promising eclipse of 2 weeks ago that was making us stand up and look at all the good things that I keep being tempted, and it's my sense of humor, to say what you could have won, but that wasn't offering what you could have won. It was offering what you can win. And I rather feel that the last eclipse was showing us what we can aim for, and this eclipse is saying, and here's the crap you have to deal with to get to where you want to be. And which is why
I really like that.
One hand giveth, the other taketh away. So the last hand gave us the dreams, the aims, the goals, the realization that this is possible. We can do this. And then we get to this eclipse and it's, oh crap, we can do it.
Yeah, well, the 2 weeks.
We need to do this, you know, whether it's, yeah, to do this, I've got to clear out the garage, or to do this, I've got to, you know, all of the problems that are in the way.
And they start coming up while the moon is waxing. So you have the first eclipse in the solar eclipse in Taurus, and then as the moon progresses, you get those topics that you're trying to put forward kind of falling apart in front of you, because you see, oh, this is a dead end, that's a dead end. Okay, so where do I go? Because my options are kind of running, I'm running out of options here. So this is what we're seeing with this eclipse. It's how badly do you want it? And are you okay with not getting it? But can you refrain? Can you, because the idea here, the muscle that's being developed, is not that of stability, is not that of being in your element. It's the one of, can you have resilience? Can you be steadfast? Can you really be disciplined to try and achieve something in the long term, to make something an institution in your personal life, but also to make clear for yourself what kinds of institutions of power in society you are answering to, because that's very important. Why are the Christians so powerful? Because they get so many people to answer to them as a primary power institution in their lives. They make themselves, the Christians, I mean, and I'm a Christian by birth, so if anyone comes saying anything in the comments about me criticizing Christians, I can say things, as many things as I want about Christianity.
I'm the godless heathen.
Yeah, he's the godless heathen. Yes. So that's one thing that they do. It's like, we are the institution of power that dictates what's good for society, and this is what you should follow. And most people will abide by that because they see the power given by the state behind the church, and they want to be a part of that power, or they want at least that power to benefit them enough so they can have a comfortable life or a good enough life, and they hope for that. So it's a power play. It's a play with hopes and dreams of the people, bread and circus all around. And the break with that kind of energy that this eclipse means, because it's like, what kinds of power institutions have you placed your faith in? How are they letting you down? And how capable are you of creating your own power structures within your life so you can follow them? How capable are you to giving your own names to what you're going through and actually try to follow a cohesive narrative for yourself without needing those power structures to dictate who you have to be. And thus you can find power structures that are more like you. Thus you can find places and goals that will resonate with who you are, you know, and you will discover who you are in the process. By self-determining, you discover structures that will have to do more with you, and then will allow you therefore to discover more of who you are. But you have to take that first step.
The direction of this has already been illuminated to you with that last eclipse, with the ability to dream here. And not only do I want a better world, I've got at least a vague picture of what that better world looks like. Whereas here we are being told, right, well, you want this better world that you just saw. This is how you have to stand up. This is how you have to be independent. This is how you have to South Node eclipse, let go of things like let go of the power structures that have been holding you back. With your focus on Mars and with my focus on Lilith here, that's the same statement again and again. And
I want to bring back,
Saturn square the nodes, same statement again.
Sorry for interrupting you. I want to mention what you were saying back with the beginning of the cycle, again, with those ripples that Jupiter and Chiron started back in the day, when Jupiter was in Aquarius with Chiron, and now Saturn is at that point, you said, right? That's it.
Yeah, that was Jupiter, Chiron.
Was probably 2009, 2010.
2009.
So yeah, back in that time, we had hopes for the future, and we set those hopes into action in a way. And those hopes, they have been frustrated, like ideals, and I'm talking long-term ideals, people. It's like back then you might have idealized this future for yourself that 10 years later, you look back at that time and you're like, wow, that's when it started for me to be here where I am with everything that's happened. How did that frustrate you? How many frustrations did you have in your path? How can they teach you about resilience? How can they teach you the value of hope in setting forward whatever you want to do now? You know, how can you look back at that time and say, wow, I was full of hope then, and that hope could really be of help right now in this situation where I feel frustrated with everything that went wrong?
I mean, it's weird looking at that time as a time of hope in a way, because yes, the world was full of hope and change, but we were also reeling from the previous year's subprime loan mortgage crisis that had created so much recession and misery.
Well, it's Jupiter conjunct Chiron, so it's about learning to have hope within difficult times. It's just about, okay, everything happened. It's Aquarius, so it's still a Saturnian sign. So it's like everything happened in this scenario in crisis mode. But now there's really this hope that things will stabilize again, that we'll be able to put this back onto its tracks. And now it's Saturn there. We've seen that completely failed. And we see now why. And now everything is out in the open and shit hit the fan big time. But how does that feeling of, okay, we can be okay again that we had back then can inform hopes that we can build for this time around, you know? It's like, okay, back then we didn't have really well-founded hopes, but they still were hopes that kept us going, and that motivated us somewhat until things stabilized enough for us to have some kind of illusion of stability again.
And if we think in those two cycles, Jupiter Lilith and more importantly Jupiter Chiron, because that will happen first, they are coming towards their end over the next couple of years, aren't they? Less than a couple of years, isn't it? Thinking about it, no, Lilith might be a while.
No, yeah, within a year, we're going to have the Jupiter conjunct Chiron in Aries. That's for sure. So we are going to see again where the self-determinacy and trying to convey by words is not enough, and we are going to see where action is necessary. Unfortunately, conflicts, as Austin Coppock will tell you in his forecasts for the past couple of years, I forget the name of the podcast he was in earlier in the year or early next year, early last year, I think, where he predicted with other people some kinds of conflicts that were larger scale, like the Ukraine war, yes, but more. So I do think that this Jupiter Chiron is also about that. The Ukraine, the propaganda that we're seeing from especially North American and European news sources are how the Ukrainians are holding up their end of the fight. And you can clearly see, not being from those places in the world, the propaganda being like, see how fun it is to fight for your country when it's being invaded by bad people. Look at the bad people, the bad doers, they're evil. We should fight them off. You should be afraid of them and they're going to invade your home. So when they do, you should take up arms. So arms are good.
And that's on both sides, isn't it?
What?
That's on both sides, because you look at the Russian media.
That's on all sides when a war is going on. But they all are trying to convince you, the higher ranking people in society that hold up the means of communication and production. They want to convince us that it's good for us to keep producing weapons, that it's good for us to keep sending our own into battles that they have set in order to gain more power for themselves. So, and that's what the media is telling us right now. It's not that the conflict is not real. It's not that it's not happening, but they want to convince us that there are good motivations behind them other than just power play between rich people that are not going to be involved in a fight. You know, so this is a kind of thing in the larger themes of society that we have to cope with. And not thinking about that is really ignoring what's motivating your own personal choices within the larger societal scheme.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, it's not just happening in with the Ukraine conflict. Tensions are building around Taiwan, with Taiwan and China. The new South Korea's new prime minister, I think, isn't it? Is saber rattling against North Korea for a change. I mean, here in the West, we're used to hearing the saber rattling in the other direction. There's plenty of hot spots, you know, going on. Of course, you can mention the Middle East and Israel, which is hitting the news yet again for all the wrong reasons. So there's this same drama being played out again and again and again.
And I want to remind you all that you have the first conjunction in the air signs, the great conjunctions of Saturn and Jupiter, happening in Libra in the 1980s, early in 1980, I think. And that was what? The height of the Cold War, right? When it was going to, when everything happened, and then it started declining until the end of the 70s, until the end of the 80s, when it ended. But that is a theme of the air conjunctions. We have Eastern powers in relation to the current dominant powers, which are Western. You have Eastern powers rising up and conflicts in that region rising up, and of the Western powers that are dominant against the Eastern powers. And you see the Eastern now, you see the culture of the Koreas, you see Japanese culture, Chinese culture, all of that bleeding in now in the communication age into the Western culture. And that being and that was the other way around earlier. We still see the American culture influences in the doramas, for instance, especially in Netflix and those westernized companies. But we see that now being where we are looking at to get the cultural references, to start building up new things. And that's going to be a theme more and more, not especially those that I mentioned, not in particular those forever, but Eastern, because the air triplicity is of the East direction in some traditional sources. So just to say something interesting, that astrology is very literal, and we've seen since the end of 2020 those powers rising up more significantly, not just as powers that are rising up, but now as equal competitors for the West. which is not something that, you know,
Well,
Western countries
just the same as what you were saying, the growth of anime in the West. It's been growing for a while, but then we see that crowned for the exact thing that you're talking about, Squid Game. You know, that was
Squid Game. Squid Game's just the top of the ice, the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Before Squid Game came, this here in Brazil, we already had this culture of drama being spread by the people who have like media access in the metropolis and the great cities, capitals, and things. Most people are already into that worldly hype, like that worldwide hype.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was amazed at. Whereas some Korean dramas and movies and stuff, I've been following it for a while because I'm a geek. But then everybody was talking about Squid Game. So again, there's that Eastern, suddenly there was that award-winning movie, wasn't there? Was it Parasite? I think. Got numerous awards for within what is normally a Western movie industry.
And that's just going to get bigger and bigger.
Of course it is, yeah. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Where can we, let's bring this back down to the personal, because I've got some more points to make about this chart yet. So we've got this stand up for yourself. Here's what you can win. Here's what you've got to deal with it to get there. Be independent, have that rebellious energy. But it's interesting that you say about the rebellious energy. Look at where Mars is. It's exactly on the degree of the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. So you can be all fired up. Because when you were saying earlier, even before we got to hope and change, you was talking about Mars, and in the back of my head, a little voice went, all fired up, ready to go. You know, another Obama slogan. But with it being on that Jupiter-Neptune, it could be dreams of a better future, or, oh my God, what it is that you think the real world is, because of that delusion and illusion Neptune thing. So you may well be put into a place to fight for what you believe the right thing, but is it the right thing?
Yes, is it the right thing? With Mars being where Jupiter and Neptune met, Jupiter and Neptune is boundless integration. It's boundless sense. It's that boundless sense of oneness. Like, and that's not really possible, I find, because it's a feeling that we have in our hearts, just to keep trying to find that oneness. It's something that keeps us going in this time consumed reality. Anyway, but those dreams of oneness are like, okay, I envision the perfect society being pink and blue. Everybody wears pink and blue, and everybody can identify everybody else by wearing pink and blue. But that other person thinks it's yellow and green. So how do we deal? We kill the yellow and green people, because of course blue and pink are the best ideal. You know, so that boundless integration is, and it's not really we kill sometimes. It's like, oh, we integrate them. But integrating the yellow and green will turn them pink and blue, and they will die soon after because it's not their nature. So it's not really an integrating society. It's just really another type of authoritarian ideal, authoritative ideal.
Which again makes me think, I mean, obviously there is numerous references to The Handmaid's Tale going on in America with what's going on with the Supreme Court and, you know, this weird Catholic cult that's infiltrated the Supreme Court, and, you know, his eye watch over you. I think that's the phrase. I never watched it. It was too depressing. And that's the ideal society for some people, whereas for other people, that's the exact opposite of the ideal society they want to fight for. And again, the rebellious energy coming up.
Yeah, and the people who want to fight for it are the ones privileged by it. And if they are not privileged necessarily by it, they've bought the ideal that they can become privileged if they just behave the right way, you know? So they're just I'm not going to say that. I'm sorry for anyone that's watching. If you guys, sorry, don't want to hurt anyone's feelings.
How do we bring this struggle down to the personal level? Because one thing that I get the impression of is, especially when we was talking about the cycles from 2009, when you think of cycles, the way that history repeats itself, or the way you see astrology cycles constantly repeating with a difference, there's often this feeling of, if you don't get it this time, you can get it next time. I don't get that with this chart.
It feels very.
I'll say some reasonings why to do with the angels and stuff in a minute. But again, that whole hello cat, that whole South Node eclipse in Scorpio, it screams death and transformation, doesn't it? It screams let go of things. The way that, and it wasn't even South Node in Scorpio that I came up with this, but the other thing that I wanted to call this moon, because I said I'd bring this in later, is change or die.
Yes.
And that's because of a relationship that I am seeing between the North Node and Pluto. But the South Node in Scorpio is much, there's a lunar eclipse South Node in Scorpio screams much the same sort of thing, doesn't it?
It does, because you have Mars again being the severer, the one that is going to split everything, the one that's going to always vouch for, let's just kill everyone and call it a day. That's Mars, and it's public shame as well. So there's lots of things here that are going to be exposed from these institutions of power that are going to reveal their true nature for those people who have been living in the ideal, who have been living in the soul image that, just serves the purpose of keeping that up, but not necessarily, it's not necessarily being held up by the what's being brought into the reality of that particular institution. And when I say institution, you can understand your own family, you can understand your job, you can understand as how you generally deal with relationships in your life as a theme, whatever that is, wherever that falls in your chart. The ideals are in Pisces, so it's like, yeah, there isn't going to be a perfect this within this house, and I better find the way to be happy within what life's giving me, or try to find my own thing.
And the way
it's
to strive for that promise that the last eclipse gave us.
Yes, and because the last eclipse really gave us the promise in the sense of allowing us to have the feeling, allowing us to feel hopeful, allowing us to feel that things can have a way out that's better than we expected, and then taking that hope away from us in a way, because life's not that good, but it can be. You visualized it, and now you can bring it to actualization. It just takes longer than you expected. Yeah. It's just not as comfortable as you thought, and things like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it so much taking the hope away from us as, okay, and here's the reality of the situation. To get where you want to be, you've got to clear out the garage. You've got to unpick your institutions. You've got to...
It's teaching us to put up the hopes. Yes, it's teaching us to put hopes into things that are action-oriented. That are like, okay, all of this is really pretty and rosy, but now that Jupiter is in Aries, how can we act on it? If we cannot, then it shouldn't be idealized in the first place. We should just quit this and go for something else that is actualizable, it is materializable, or that we can bring into reality.
So I want to just focus on that North Node Pluto thing, because that's where I got the change or die from. How I didn't figure it out from like South Node lunar eclipse in Scorpio, I don't know, but I got it from North Node Pluto. There is a ruled by degree, both North Node and Pluto, by the angel Lavia, who grants victory, protection, and banishes the remnants of evil. So there's that sense of the North Node Pluto saying, here's your real chance to clear out the crap, for want of a better word. And when we get onto the 12 parts, because there's not very many angelic or demonic relationships within this chart that are just planet to planet or body to planet, you know, if we count Lilith and the North and the nodes. Whereas the vast majority of those relationships are included in the 12 parts. We have, like I've mentioned, Pahalia, I've mentioned Lauvia with North Node and Pluto, and there's also, oh, I've suddenly forgotten, but the Sun and Uranus, I think it's under Ariel's degree, and that's it for the angels, whereas there's 3 or 4 demonic relationships going on. So there is chance for things to misunderstandings and temptations as well, as much as it feels like you are constructively building something on these misunderstandings and temptations, nevertheless, it's on a false premise. We have the Goetic Lord Halfas, who builds towers and provides weapons and ammunition and sends soldiers to appointed places. I think that's quite interesting. Now, he's the loudest in this chart, but he's between Venus and Chiron. He's activating that warlike nature of Venus, I think, which is interesting, and ruling, let me see, it's Venus's 12th part, Jupiter's 12th part, Chiron and Venus, which, yeah, just sounds a little bit like it could be a recipe for disaster if you allow it to be. I'm not sure building towers and hoarding ammunition is necessarily the best way to solve the problem.
Yeah, no. And I would like to call to attention that the Sun is in Saturn's decan. So it really calls into, can you be disciplined to pursue what you want? Can you use this motivation and this fire that is within you as a fuel for your disciplined action? You know, and can you be stable enough in that action in order to wait for things to really develop the way you need them to wait for the right opportunities just by being in the right place? Can you be steadfast, in other words? And but
that's where it comes down to the personal level, isn't it? Because we've been talking about all these global themes, but this is something that can be not as far away as between you and your back gate.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that looking at also a bit at the benefics being ruled by Mars right now in Aries, it's telling us that, yeah, it's not going to be the most Venusian thing. Venus is debilitated, but there is some good to be taken out of making those harsh decisions, those forceful kind of attitudes, or being a little bit impositive about what you really believe in. It's just showing your true colors is being really rewarded right now. Not because you're going to get all those good things if you're Martian or Aryan. You're not going to suddenly get people doing whatever you want and obeying every whim you have. No, you're just going to learn with yourself how you can be most assertive and how you can feel comfortable detaching from certain things that are not serving you anymore.
Yes, because like you say, you just triggered something in me, as you can probably tell. Yeah, you're not going to get other people obeying your every whim and doing everything what you want that you say, but you have an opportunity here to get you to obey your whims and to get you to obey what you say. So it is a beautiful chance to get rid of rubbish and do what you say you're going to do what you believe is the right thing. And even though all these obstacles are coming up, you are being encouraged to go, if that's an obstacle, that's fine, because I can get round it, through it, over it, move it, repurpose it, you know, it's there is a reason, and dealing with this thing will get me closer to my goal.
Yes. Are you willing to fight for your comfort? Are you willing to be uncomfortable in the short term, in the present, when a situation rises that demands you to do that in order to become stable in the long run? Or are you so spoiled, basically, that when a circumstance comes to you that wasn't exactly what you were planning, what you expected, it was a curveball? I know that life throws us some pretty nasty shit sometimes. And I'm not saying for those people going through heavy stuff that, you know, you're complaining too much, you should just stick it up. No. Yeah. But sometimes you don't have a choice. And how resilient can you be in this time? And really, resilience and the strength of mind and character are being compensated at this time, with Jupiter and Venus being in Aries. There is a thing of, yes, I feel uncomfortable. Yes, I feel like I had to do something that I didn't want to do again, and I'm feeling triggered about it. But now it's a different kind of triggering. Whereas before I would feel like life has defeated me. Now I'm so tired of being down in the dirt all the time and being stepped on. I'm tired of being everybody's doormat. So I'm just going to get up and do something about it. I'm just going to move to another neighborhood. I'm just going to move towns. I'm just going to do the ultimate sacrifice if I have to. I'm not going to say about killing anyone or dying, but the ultimate sacrifice is in whatever things that you are too attached to by fear, that you're like, oh, I've been afraid of letting go of this for so long right now because I felt like my security depended on it. But really, how safe am I if this keeps being a source of insecurity, a source of despair, a source of panic whenever it's threatened, and it's threatened a lot. So I should just change the circumstance, you know? So I am willing to sacrifice this thing that has been really a pain in the ass to keep up in order to open up new space for more stability. That's basically the gist of what I'm seeing there.
There's another thing that you've said was, are you willing to fight for it? And that fight doesn't always mean, because that fight can mean work. Saturn will reward those that are putting the work in. You get this big obstacle that's in front of you and you take it apart piece by piece and you shift it out of the way and you repurpose it if you can, and if you can't, you get rid. And there may be a lot of, that's another face for that fighting, that you just keep going no matter what. So yeah, one thing, I now have 3 titles. So Change or Die, One Hand Giveth, or Don't Give Up.
Yes, and I think that, just mentioning really quickly the modalities, if you have a cardinal ascendant, that is Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, you will have this particular energy falling into your succeedent places, which are the places that follow the angles. They are places about stability, materiality, and things like that. So you're probably seeing a shift on your resources and how you get them, and what you're aiming for in relation to your future plans and things like that. That's something that you've been finding difficult to let go of. You just have to understand that if you're not willing to self-determine enough, like to tell yourself, oh, it's like, I have this, sorry, a car went off in the back. Okay. It's
barely hear it.
So you have these benefics really propelling you to say, oh, this is good enough, that's good enough, because you just want to be comfortable. You just want to do the thing to stabilize something in the long run, and you want that to be actualized here and now, because the benefics are in angles in Aries. But it's not really being given right now for you to be stable forever. You have to learn the steady, fast kind of action and disciplined kind of action that is required of it in order to have a proper future planning. And that requires self-determination. And I'm repeating on that theme because it's something that Dana Lynn from the People's Oracle also is repeating a lot in the past few weeks, because of the Saturn in her because of Saturn and Aquarius kind of vibe and how Aquarius also deals with it. It has a lot to do with. The fixed signs, they're the ones who are getting it more on their angles, like the eclipse energies there, the Saturn energies there. And you guys have been stable on something for a while, or you have this energy of being stable in your life in general, of trying to go for that. But you're realizing that whatever you've put your faith into and whatever you put your stability into in the past months has just been telling you, like, yeah, you've refused to make the effort that you needed to make for this to really work. And you've refused, not in a disciplined kind of action. It's like they can be disciplined, but it's just like, oh, I didn't really want to do this. It was just a higher ideal. It was just something that I have envisioned for my life, that now that I see myself as, I don't really like it and I want to change it. But that makes you feel insecure as well. It's about more of your own personality rather than just, are you capable of keeping it up? You know, you are capable of keeping it up, but do you like what you've kept up in the long term, what you're building? And with the mutable signs, it's more of, can you let go of those past circumstances? Can you really just be okay with things being okay in your life? Or can you just be okay with, like, you already know that this has been the scenario for a long time. Can you just be stable for a while and try to make things not change? Can you just not be chaotic, in other terms, and try to stabilize something for once? So, yeah.
There's been this overwhelming theme that we've had, and I've not even touched yet on the Sabian symbol for this degree, which is Native Americans making camp after moving into a new territory. And that's another reason why I think the last eclipse has shown us, there's the new territory, that's how you get there. And now we're actually on that path to finding, this is too heavy, can't take that, this is in the way, got to move that. So there's this whole, we are in a new time now. And this is where, again, I feel with that, that North Node Pluto, because if you bring the 12 parts up, David, although I know we've got a discussion about that. In fact, while you do that, I'll just explain. So I use the mean node, David uses the true node. So on the true node, you can see that the North Node 12th part has moved past Pluto. On the mean node, that North Node 12th part is still on Pluto. So again, there's that echo of that Lauvia, that by degree, and by the fact that the actual real North Node is also in Lauvia's degree, and the 12th part on the mean is on Lauvia's degree. Now, the fact that it's moved on, David, for using the true node, what would you draw from that?
Honestly, I just use the true node and south node, because the true nodes, because I think the mean node is a simplification. I don't like that. I don't like when people like put a steady pace on the nodes just to make it look better for them, like in their head, like, oh, pace, and I can foresee kind of, it doesn't make sense in my head. Just use the pace from the normal thing, from the actual thing.
Is the, because I can't see that on this screen, so are the true nodes direct or retrograde at the moment?
They are stationary.
They're stationary, so they're at that point. So again, there's that heavy extra, this is important, because whenever things are still, they have more whammy, don't they? Because that's
they do that.
We need the nodes to have more whammy. They're just not powerful enough, are they?
Yeah, they do that often, but in the south node, the true nodes, they generally also go direct every once in a while, very quickly, and they go direct for a few degrees, for very few minutes of arc, but they are sometimes direct. And so I like to see those little shifts. And yes, it does become more emphasized if there's something standing still on top of it. But
so the other thing that I drew out on, considering we've got that Saturn square the node stuff going on, we've got Saturn's 12th part right over the moon. Now, you didn't like the look of that earlier.
no.
No. Do tell.
When you have malefic 12th parts with the luminaries, it's never a good sign. It's something that means that whatever maleficence that planet, and Saturn is already square to the moon. So and that moon is already not well placed by being in Scorpio. So it keeps adding up factors that we are going to be uncomfortable. And we are going to really need to detach, get away, separate, which are all malefic significations, from circumstances, lunar signification, that really bring us suffering. And we know they bring us suffering. And they bring us suffering through Scorpio means. They make us feel unwelcome. They make us feel like we don't belong in a particular structure. They make us feel like we are being disregarded by the people that are supposed to be our network of support. And Saturn is also good alliances. So there isn't a good promise around those particular themes of public life and being seen well by the people around you. It doesn't mean that it's going to be extreme. It just means that there are those themes. Like for family dynamics that work well, it might be just rising up. Look, I was comfortable and I was okay with you leaving your dishes for me to do every once in a while. But today that was really it. I cannot do this anymore because I'm stressed out with these other things. And now this is weighing on me. And I didn't realize it weighed on me earlier because I wasn't so worked up with everything else. But now I am. So can you please stop? And it can be those simple dynamics in our daily routine that really bring about the topics that we need to bring up to reshape our ideals around those houses.
And if you notice, there's another reference to that Jupiter Chiron cycle, as Jupiter's north node, Jupiter's 12th part is just about to cross over Chiron shortly after the eclipse.
Yes.
You sound even less enthused by that one.
No, I was just thinking also about how the moon is square to the 12th part of the moon is square to the actual moon as well, suggesting the conflict of interests. Yeah, it's better to have it contact than reversed, but still it's a square.
Yeah, so we were saying there is this potential for conflict going on here.
Not only potential, I think it's certain at this point.
You're not the only astrologer I've heard that says, take these couple of days if you can, and just, I mean, in other words, they could have just said, lock yourself in your house, don't go out, don't talk to anybody, don't switch on the phone, don't just spend time with yourself looking at your own inner feelings.
And if you do that, you'll probably be avoiding, sometimes you'll be avoiding necessary conflict, but if you avoid the conflict, you will also see the lack of that conflict in your routine as significant. You'll be like, oh, so this is the weight that those things I'm trying to avoid today have on me. And amazing, I try to avoid specifically those things because the astrologers told me so. So they are weighing on me. They are the things that I need to cut off. They are the things that I need to give some space so I can think clearly in my routine. So just by avoiding conflict right now, you will see the things that you need to cut off. But yeah,
that's going to be hard because the whole idea with this South Node, Scorpio, blah, 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 is us letting go. And the conflict, the up and at it, is very, very tempting, as we saw with, was it Halfus, who's building towers and provides weapons and ammunition. On that note, we have the eclipse conjunct the asteroid Asterope, one of the Pleiades, whose name means lightning, conjunct by 58
Pleiades are never good.
And this asteroid may give a love of challenge and confrontation. Lightning, storms, and electricity may also hold personal significance, but it's that.
Are you joking?
No. I just missed out. It also said this asteroid may give a love of challenge and confrontation, athletic ability, charisma, and an inclination towards leadership. So again, there's that Martian energy that you were talking about, the Lilith thing that I was seeing. The leadership, personal leadership, is a good. Be your own leader. Don't try and be somebody else's. And lightning, storms, and electricity may hold personal significance, which is interesting.
Yes.
Because eclipse
really
is
like
Uranian energy with the whole lightning thing.
Yeah, and the be your own, it's square, the 12 parts, and the actual moon is also square to Uranus. You have it playing a part in this eclipse. That's important as well. But I wanted to say also to the moon being in Leo in its 12th part is like, can you really self-determine? Can you really go for what you believe in? Can you, because this is a challenge, right? Again, the square to the moon in the 12th part here and the opposition to Saturn. So can you really be comfortable with your own ideals to the point that you uphold them no matter what circumstance you go through? Which is Mars and the Sun together, kind of having that dynamic of Leo and Scorpio. With Saturn here being people definitely pushing back against whatever you say you are and telling you no, but this is wrong according to the major perspective of what should be done, of what you should be.
And there's both ways. That can be the people around you who are being those obstacles that are being put in front of you, or it could be the institutions looking at the people and the institutions being the obstacles. There's so many different levels that can work.
It's the institutions mostly. It's the institutions mostly. You have Saturn being in its own domicile. You have the Sun being in Taurus, which is also institutions and social agreements. And you have Mars being conjunct Neptune. And Jupiter just ingress into Aries. So it does give the sense of institutions versus individual. Yeah. And it's going to permeate all of our personal lives, whether you want it or not. You're going to say, oh, I don't like to discuss politics very much. Well, I'm sorry. The deals that are being made right now and the agreements that are being reshaped in society globally are affecting our personal lives. They're affecting how much you pay for rice in the market. They're affecting how much you pay for groceries everywhere.
They are affecting baby formula in America. They are affecting our trade agreements with Europe here in Britain.
Birth control rights. They're affecting abortion laws. They're affecting all these things that really are social agreements, but that will impact the lives of the populace. And that will affect our lives in society in a way that if your neighbor is suffering from something, you will be suffering from that as well. And you will have something to talk about at the end of the day over some whatever you have left to drink, if you can pay for it.
But let's finish this video on a positive note, because there is a reason we've had the promise of that wonderful solar eclipse, and now we are having that hard dose of reality. I like that moon square its own 12th part. I like it because it's asking you to, are you sure about your feelings? Are you sure that this is what you feel, or this is just what you are told to feel or think you feel? Is there something underneath it? Squares are constructive. Take the few days, do your best not to boss anybody about and not to get into conflict. Spend some time looking within, looking where that uncomfortable feeling is. But also, this is to show you the way forward. This is making those airy-fairy visions that we've experienced a few of in the last month, Jupiter, Neptune, and the partial solar eclipse, and showing you this is what you need to do to make it a reality. This is all part of the plan. This is like when you start a new course at college and you're like, for instance, if I wanted to go and learn about coding, which I do vaguely, but I would feel so drowned even on that first lesson. And this is that first lesson where you feel drowned. But
yes,
without sounding too love and light, it gets better. It will get better if you pay attention to what you are told here and you eventually take action on it. Be a leader to yourself, not for anybody else. That's my four-penner anyway, I think. Have you got anything more positive to add?
Yeah, I don't think I'd have anything else to add, and I cannot be too positive about this eclipse. Like, I'm not going to put on rose-colored glasses for anyone just because the person might want to hear, oh, everything's going to go right in my life. No.
This chart itself's awful.
Yeah, this chart itself,
it's part of a process.
It is, and everything you said is completely valid. But if you do the work, and it's hard, it's going to be difficult, it's going to be annoying. And if you're not willing to get used to that particular side of reality, you might as well give up, or just accept the fact that you're going to be a burden for everyone around you, because while everybody's trying to do their bidding or their thing, you're dragging around complaining about things that you didn't want to have to do, but you're obliged to anyway.
And that's the cheerful bit you're adding, yes?
The cheerful bit is you'll be rewarded so long as you don't complain about it and just get on with it, you know? And you'll be rewarded by not overburdening yourself with complaints while you're going to have to go through a shit time, you know? That's it. That's basically it. Don't try to make it harder than it is.
Right. So before my viewing numbers suddenly go down dramatically because everyone's thrown themselves off bridges, so David, what else have you got going on?
Well, you can always check my website. I offer tutorings for people who are beginner astrologers or people who are just trying to integrate the practice into their lives. I teach you timing techniques. I teach you predictive work. I teach you natal work. I teach you several types of stuff. Check out my Instagram. Also have my channel on YouTube. All of that's going to be in the description, I believe. And I have this ongoing tarot series of associations with the decans of the zodiac with D in my channel. And you shall see an installment of that with us wearing the same clothes that we are here right now, because we're probably going to record that in the sequence. So do check that out if the link is available.
As ever, you can approach either of us for a reading. There are all the contact details below. Obviously, I'm not doing astrology readings yet. I'm still taking a lot of time because new job in the real world. And also I'm doing a course later this year on angels and demons in the birth chart through Bloodstone Studios. So I'm spending a lot of time pulling all the information together that I can for that. So I am going to actually try and do some readings this weekend, considering that it is the eclipse. We've been given the gifts of the first eclipse, and I'm sorry, call me overpoweringly positive if you want, you Capricorn. But there's the gifts of this one. They're just going to be icky and dirty and horrible and nasty, but they're still going to be worth it if you work with them. So I think I'm going to make a special effort to try and get these readings knocked out. They're not necessarily going to be long ones. But other than that, all the contact details are below. I do recommend hopping over to David's channel as well, because like you say, if your attraction to coming to see me is David, he's got his own channel. Oh no, I should go that way, shouldn't I? However, if I'm the attraction, because of course I am, see the new hair, then I'm also on David's channel. So good luck, everyone. Take it easy is probably a good way, because the world will try and make it rough for you, and your own mind will try and make it rough for you, and your heart will try and make it rough for you. So just accept that you're like a boat in a storm. The storm will pass, but see what you can find floating on the water in the meantime. And I suppose on that, we'll say cheerio.